You're trying to get straight to the good stuff.
Right.
To really get these big ideas without wading through endless pages and, have those aha moments.
Exactly. Less overwhelm, more clarity.
Well, that's what we're aiming for today. We're doing a deep dive into some really fascinating material on power, on strategy, all thanks to the sources you shared with us.
Yeah, we're looking at Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power.
And just the acknowledgments alone. Lorette and Stanley Greene, Boris the Cat, Susan Peterson, Barbara Grossman, Molly Stern, Sophia Murer, David Frankel, Roni Axelrod, Barbara Campo, Jay Zimet, Joe Eagle, Radha Pancham, Marie Tamel, Michael Fragnito, Eng San Ko. It sort of gives you a sense of the breadth behind this work.
It really does.
So our mission today, let's pull out the key insights on power dynamics, strategic thinking. Basically, give you a shortcut to understanding these complex ideas.
Sounds good. And what's interesting is how timeless a lot of this feels. We're talking about patterns of human behavior that, well, they just keep showing up.
Okay, let's jump in. Law number 1, never outshine the master. This feels fundamental, but maybe a bit counterintuitive. What's the core idea?
It really boils down to the psychology of people in charge. Making your superiors feel good about themselves, feel secure, it's crucial. If you make them feel insecure, even accidentally, that's where the problems start.
It triggers their own fear and insecurity.
Exactly. Even if you're brilliant and doing great work.
We've got the historical example, Louis XIV and Fouquet. What happened there?
Fouquet. He was Louis XIV's finance minister. Super competent, maybe a bit too flamboyant for his own good. He threw this incredibly lavish party at his amazing new estate.
Trying to impress the king, presumably.
Probably, but it backfired. The sheer brilliance and, I guess, the display of his success made the young king feel, well, outshone. Threatened, maybe. And despite Fouquet's loyalty and skill, Louis saw him as a rival, someone whose brightness dimmed his own. So Fouquet ended up imprisoned, replaced by the much more understated Colbert.
Wow. So it wasn't about competence, but about the king's ego, really.
Pretty much. It's about managing the master's perception of their brilliance.
And Balthazar Gracian had some strong words on this, right? Something about stars and the sun.
He did. He put it very starkly. Avoid outshining the master. All superiority is odious, but the superiority of a subject over his prince is not only stupid, it is fatal.
Fatal. Strong word.
Yeah, he compares it to the stars. No matter how bright they are, they don't try to compete with the sun. It's about knowing your place in the hierarchy.
But what if the master is fading? If the sun is setting, so to speak? The sources mention a reversal.
Right, this is where it gets strategically interesting. If your superior is clearly losing power, a falling star, the calculation changes.
So you don't need to hold back quite so much.
The advice suggests that showing mercy in these situations often isn't rewarded. Instead, it's about, well, discreetly positioning yourself. Maybe letting your own light shine a bit more to subtly hasten their decline.
Discreetly being the key word there.
Absolutely. You don't want to look like you're kicking them when they're down. That creates its own problems. It's all about reading the situation.
Constant calibration. Okay, Law 3. Conceal your intentions. This feels very strategic. Why is hiding your real goals so important?
Because predictability makes you vulnerable. If people know what you're really after, they can prepare, they can block you, they can manipulate the situation.
You lose the element of surprise.
Completely. Keeping your intentions hidden means you control the narrative. People have to react to what you do, not what they think you're going to do. It keeps them guessing, off balance.
And Bismarck, he was apparently a master of this, the Prussian military speech example.
Oh, absolutely. Bismarck gave this speech in the 1850s about Prussia and Austria, sounding quite conciliatory towards Austria, actually.
But that wasn't his real plan.
Not at all. His long-term goal was Prussian dominance and eventual German unification under Prussia. But he needed to mislead the king and others at that moment. His insincerity, you could call it, acted like a smokescreen. Yeah. It calmed potential opposition while he maneuvered behind the scenes. A brilliant, if deceptive, play.
So saying one thing while planning another, the source also suggests most of us are pretty bad at this. We're like open books.
That's a key observation. Many people just naturally share their thoughts, their plans, their feelings. It seems honest, right?
Yeah, transparent.
But from a strategic point of view, it makes you incredibly predictable. The text even calls honesty a blunt instrument, suggesting it can sometimes be counterproductive or even offensive.
Interesting take. So being too open is a liability. The advice is to cultivate a kind of bland exterior, like a poker face.
Exactly. A bland, unreadable surface. It's camouflage. If you seem ordinary, predictable in a non-threatening way, people lower their guard. They don't look for hidden motives.
It lets you operate under the radar.
Precisely.
And that story about Weil, the uncle, and the fixed boxing match, that seems like a pretty clear, if maybe unethical, example of using hidden intentions for gain.
Yeah, that's a classic con artist tale. Weil sets up this whole scenario, the fixed fight, a supposed side deal. Giesel thinks he's in on it, puts up the money.
But he doesn't know the real plan.
Right. He only sees the part Weil wants him to see. Giesel is the sucker because his understanding is incomplete, manipulated by Weil's concealed intentions. It shows how powerful deception can be, for good or ill.
Okay, let's shift to Law 4. Always say less than necessary. Related to concealment, but focused on words.
Definitely related. It's about the power of silence, or at least brevity. When you talk less, your words seem to carry more weight, more significance.
Like scarcity creates value.
Sort of. Plus, the less you say, the lower the chance of saying something foolish, revealing too much, or digging yourself into a hole.
That story about Tsar Nicholas I, wow. The man whose hanging rope broke.
A really stark example. Riley, the condemned man, survives the first attempt. Maybe he thinks it's divine intervention, makes a comment about his luck.
And the Tsar's reply.
It's just ice cold. Then I shall have to try again. Utterly final. That brevity just amplified his absolute power. No discussion, no justification, just the sentence.
Chilling.
Yeah.
And the flip side is that talking too much makes you seem ordinary, less powerful.
Exactly. Constant chatter can make you seem commonplace, less impressive. The mystery evaporates. Power often lies in what's unsaid, letting others project importance onto your silence.
Like that amazing story of Zhuge Liang and the empty city, facing a huge army with no defenses.
That's a fantastic illustration. Sima Yi arrives with his massive army, expecting a fight. Instead, he sees Zhuge Liang chilling on the city walls, playing his lute, gates wide open, silence.
What does he do?
He freaks out. He assumes it must be an elaborate trap. The silence, the apparent calm, it felt too unnatural, so he orders a retreat.
Incredible. Liang's silence and composure were his best defense.
His inaction spoke volumes, projecting confidence he didn't actually have in terms of troops.
Fascinating. Okay, Law 19. Know who you're dealing with. Do not offend the wrong person. This seems like basic social intelligence, but probably harder in practice.
It's absolutely crucial. You can't treat everyone the same way. People react differently. They have different triggers, different ways of getting revenge, different kinds of influence. One wrong move with the wrong person can be disastrous.
So you need to size people up carefully. The sources mention a preliminary typology: opponents, suckers, victims, distinguishing wolves from lambs.
Right. It's about recognizing different archetypes. Some people, wolves, are proud, maybe insecure, and will hunt you down if they feel slighted. Others, lambs, might be easier to manipulate or deceive.
And you need to know which is which before you act.
Precisely. You don't want to try a clever deception on someone who's incredibly suspicious, or casually insult someone who holds grudges forever. Tailor your approach.
That anecdote about Duveen, the art dealer, and Henry Ford is a great example of getting it wrong.
Oh, definitely. Duveen was usually brilliant at reading wealthy clients, flattering them, appealing to their egos, but he completely misjudged Ford.
How so?
He saw Ford as this plain, maybe unsophisticated guy. He tried to wow him with these expensive books showing reproductions, thinking Ford would then have to buy the originals to prove his status.
And Ford
was just literal. He looked at the books and basically said, why would I buy the paintings when I have these perfectly good pictures right here?
Duveen's usual tactics totally failed because he didn't understand Ford's practical, unimpressed nature. Costly mistake.
He offended Ford's practicality, maybe? We also see strategic ambiguity, like with Queen Elizabeth I and her marriage proposals.
Elizabeth was playing a long game. She kept the French Dukes of Anjou and Alençon dangling for years.
Why?
By never fully committing to either or definitively rejecting them, she kept France guessing, and more importantly, kept them relatively friendly. It was pure diplomatic strategy, using ambiguity to maintain peace and leverage. She knew exactly who she was dealing with: powerful, sensitive monarchies. And Alcibiades, the Greek guy who switched sides.
Alcibiades was the ultimate chameleon. Athens, Sparta, Persia, he played them all. His power came from never fully committing to any one side.
He kept his options open.
Exactly. He understood what each side wanted and feared and used that knowledge to remain valuable, autonomous, and influential. masterful maneuvering.
It all comes back to understanding motivations. There's also that interesting, maybe cynical point from Schopenhauer about intelligence. Sometimes it pays to seem less smart.
Yeah, Schopenhauer noted that obvious intellectual superiority can breed resentment and aversion in others. So sometimes, for social harmony or strategic gain, deliberately downplaying your intelligence might be wise.
You don't inadvertently offend someone's ego.
Precisely. It ties right back into Law 19, know your audience. Sometimes appearing non-threatening is the smartest play.
Okay, let's look at Law 25. Recreate yourself. This is about actively shaping your public image, not just accepting the one you're given.
Exactly. Don't be defined by others' expectations or the role society tries to put you in. Forge your own identity. Create a persona that commands attention, breaks molds, and serves your purpose. Take control of the story people tell about you.
Julius Caesar did this early on, didn't he? With the public games.
Absolutely. As a daedal, he put on these incredibly lavish spectacles, gladiator fights, wild beast hunts, way beyond what was normal, often funded himself.
Right.
It wasn't just about entertainment. It cemented an image of Caesar in the public mind. Generous, powerful, a man of the people, associated with grandeur, he was consciously building his brand, his public persona, which paid off massively later.
Strategic image building. And George Sand, the female novelist, adopting a male identity.
A fascinating example. Amandine Dupin became George Sand, wore men's clothes, smoked cigars in public. This wasn't just affectation.
It was a strategy.
Yes. In 19th century France, this masculine persona gave her freedom, access, and authority that she, as a woman, would have been denied in the literary and social worlds. She defied limitations by constructing this public self while privately remaining who she was.
A powerful way to claim space. The sources also mention a darker side using a scapegoat, Richelieu and Marignyac's brother.
Right. This shows how image creation can be ruthless. Richelieu needed to project absolute power and deter opposition. By executing Marignyac's brother, who was likely innocent of the main charges, he sent a terrifying message.
It wasn't about justice. It was about the image of his power.
Exactly. He was recreating himself in the public eye as someone you absolutely did not cross. The scapegoat served to solidify that fearsome image.
Chilling. And Mata Hari, famous not for talent, but for mystery.
Her power was almost entirely based on the persona she created. Was she Javanese royalty? A temple dancer? Nobody knew for sure.
And that was the point.
That was the allure. She wrapped herself in this exotic enigma, the constant speculation, the unanswered questions. That's what made her famous and desired, far more than her actual dancing, apparently. She manufactured mystery, and it worked.
Mystery is a power tool. Okay, Law 28. Enter action with boldness. This feels pretty straightforward. Be confident, act decisively.
It is, but the implications are key. Timidity looks like weakness. It invites aggression. Boldness, even if risky, commands respect. It creates an aura of power. Hesitation kills momentum.
Hannibal's escape, with the oxen and the burning twigs. That sounds incredibly bold.
It was genius. His army was trapped in marshland, Romans closing in. His solution: tie burning twigs to oxen horns, drive them up the hills at night.
What did the Romans think?
They saw these moving lights, thought Hannibal's main force was attacking or maneuvering elsewhere, and got totally confused and diverted. It was pure psychological warfare, a bold, unexpected spectacle that created chaos and allowed his real army to slip away.
Wow. Audacity itself was the weapon. The sources use the lion versus the hare analogy.
Right. The lion acts decisively, directly. The hare hesitates, darts around fearfully, and often ends up trapped. Boldness leads to action and often success. Timidity leads to paralysis and vulnerability.
Makes sense. And Machiavelli weighed in on this too. Fortune favors the bold.
He certainly believes so. That famous quote about fortune being like a woman who yields more readily to the bold and impetuous than the cautious. Act decisively. Seize the moment.
The boldness isn't always the answer. The sources mention feigned timidity.
Ah, yes. Another layer of strategy. Just as you can project boldness, you can also pretend to be timid or hesitant.
Why would you do that?
To lure an opponent into a trap. If they underestimate you, think you're weak or uncertain, they might get careless, overconfident. Then you strike. It's using perceived weakness as a weapon.
So boldness can be a performance too. Okay, Law 29. Plan all the way to the end. This is about foresight, thinking long term.
Crucial. Don't just focus on the first step or the immediate goal. Think through all the potential consequences, obstacles, and the ultimate endgame. What does victory really look like, and how do you make sure you get there and stay there?
Avoid winning the battle but losing the war.
Exactly. Or having someone else snatch your victory at the last minute because you didn't anticipate their move.
Balboa crossing Panama to find the Pacific. That was his long-term plan to get out of trouble.
Pretty much. He was an outlaw facing serious charges back in Spain. His immediate prospects were grim, but he calculated that discovering a whole new ocean for the Spanish crown, well, that was a gamble big enough to potentially overwrite everything else.
A huge risk, but with a potentially huge payoff.
And it required immense planning and foresight to even attempt it, let alone succeed, given his situation. He was looking way beyond his current problems.
Montaigne had a quote about this: easier to stay out than get out.
Yes, how much easier it is never to get in than to get yourself out. It emphasizes that thinking ahead, avoiding pitfalls through planning is much better than trying to fix messes later.
Plan carefully up front.
And he also advises saving your energy, your big push, for the very end to ensure you actually complete the job. Don't run out of steam halfway through.
Like Houdini. His escapes looked effortless, but were anything but.
Absolutely. People saw the miraculous escape, but not the hours of practice, the hidden tools, the meticulous study of locks, the physical conditioning.
The planning.
The intense, detailed planning behind the illusion of effortlessness. That visible ease was built on a hidden foundation of hard work and preparation.
Which leads us perfectly to the next one, Law 30. Make your accomplishments seem effortless. Hide the sweat.
Exactly. Don't reveal the struggle, the long hours, the trial and error. Let your achievements appear natural, almost magical. It creates awe.
Makes you seem like you have innate talent, not just that you worked hard.
Precisely. It elevates you above the ordinary. If people see the messy process, they think, oh, well, I could do that if I tried hard enough. But if it looks effortless, it seems like a sign of true mastery, even genius.
The sources mention sprezzatura from the Renaissance. Studied carelessness.
Yes! Sprezzatura. It was this ideal, especially for courtiers and artists, making difficult things look easy, graceful, done without apparent effort, concealing the artifice, the practice.
Like a great athlete making a difficult play look smooth.
Exactly. You don't see the thousands of hours of training, just the fluid execution.
And Michelangelo guarding his work in progress, even from popes.
He was famously secretive. It wasn't just about protecting trade secrets. It was about preserving the impact, the magic of the final reveal.
If they saw the scaffolding, the chipping away, the half-finished bits.
It would diminish the sense of wonder when they saw the David or the Sistine Chapel ceiling completed. Seeing the labor makes it human. Hiding the labor makes it seem divine, almost.
So hide the work to maximize the impact. Wow, we've covered a lot of ground here. A lot of strategic thinking.
We certainly have. From deception and image management to understanding people and planning for the long haul, it's quite a framework.
Yeah, interconnected ideas, really. Strategic deception, managing how you're seen, really knowing who you're dealing with, and then having that vision for the end game combined with the boldness to act.
And these insights, drawn from the material you shared, they really do offer a lens for looking at power dynamics everywhere: work, social circles, negotiations.
It's not just a list, is it? It's more like they all weave together. Hiding your intentions goes with saying less. Knowing your opponent influences how bold you are or how you choose to recreate yourself for them.
Exactly. They inform each other. It encourages a more observant, maybe more critical way of seeing interactions, not just surface level, but the undercurrents of influence.
Right. So for you listening, as you move through your day, maybe think about these dynamics. Where do you see these laws playing out? Could just being aware of them change how you approach a situation?
It definitely pushes you to think more about why people do what they do and the subtle ways power operates all around us. Less reacting, more observing and strategizing.
It's been really insightful. Thanks so much for sharing these sources and letting us dive in like this.
My pleasure. Fascinating stuff to unpack.